one thing he's going to have to deal with, Myles, this popped late last night. The lawsuit was filed late last night. I got a copy of it earlier today. We have a full breakdown at ProFootballTalk.com, a sexual assault lawsuit involving a massage that Deshaun Watson got. And he found this masseuse on Instagram, exchanged a few messages with her, went to her house, and the allegation from her, this is her allegation in the complaint, is that he wanted more than a massage. And eventually there was an assault, a sexual assault, not a rape or anything like that, but you can read it all on PFT. I don't want to get into all the graphic details, but it's something, as I said today on PFT Live, that Deshaun Watson is going to have to deal with. A tweet, a statement, a press release, that's not going to make it go away. Once you activate the legal process, there are steps that are taken. There are documents that are filed. There are court dates that are set. You don't just show up like Joe Pesci and My Cousin Vinny on the day of the arraignment, different context, criminal trial, and say, we want to fast forward to a dismissal. You have to go through the process. He'll have to answer the complaint. He'll have to submit at some point to testimony under oath. They'll have to provide text messages. There's reference to text messages that were exchanged between the plaintiff, who has gone with a pseudonym to protect her identity, and Deshaun Watson. You develop the case, and then at some point, the case potentially goes to trial unless it's settled. And there was an effort to settle it beforehand. It didn't work. And now this is something that Watson's going to have to deal with. And I heard from a GM today who said, how can you trade for Deshaun Watson when you have this cloud that's hanging out there? Well, one way you do it is you put your own lawyers and security people to work, Myles, to get to the bottom of it as quickly as possible, and you make your assessment. That's happened before. That's not unprecedented. And if you're comfortable with the guy, with the story he's telling, and that you believe it's not going to become a major issue for you at some point, you still proceed with a trade for Deshaun Watson.
Well, it's not just that it's happened before. It happens every single year. These teams do this with draft prospects all the time because there are different things that come up, whether it's, an assault charge because a guy was, trying to protect his girlfriend, and the girlfriend was being harassed by somebody, and that ended up with an assault charge. And then you say, okay, well, I feel comfortable drafting this guy because I know what he was doing, and I know he was protecting his girlfriend. Whether it was maybe a marijuana charge that, the guy was caught with a couple of grams of pot. And then do you feel comfortable dealing with that particular player? These things happen all the time. And NFL teams have a lot of people who are able to investigate different things so that they feel comfortable with the background of a player in order to draft them and essentially give them a lot of money and decide that they want this player representing them in their franchise. So I think that, there are ways that teams could become comfortable with trading for Deshaun Watson if they decide that they want to investigate this particular issue that has now come up for him. It's certainly possible that a team could become comfortable doing that, I think.
And Myles, this is another reason for the Texans to set basically the start of the draft as the deadline, because then it gives everyone 5-6 weeks to come to the conclusion that they're comfortable with this. Now, look, if he's guilty of what he's been accused of doing, and ultimately what will happen is if there is a trial, it will be testimony from the masseuse, testimony from Deshaun Watson. Who do you believe? Do you believe her? Do you believe him? The standard is low in a civil case, proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Doesn't have to. No, I'm sorry. That's the criminal standard. In a civil case, it's preponderance of the evidence. It's the first time I've ever gotten that wrong. I went to law school 30 years ago. I've known those standards for so long, I got them screwed up. But preponderance of the evidence, 51-49. It doesn't take much. We were talking about scales earlier. All you have to do is tip it a little bit in favor of one or the other, and that's the outcome. And the challenge is going to be, to the extent there is objective evidence in the communications, in the Instagram ad that he responded to, the direct messages that would have been sent, the text messages that were sent. There's an allegation in the complaint that he apologized via text. Well, what did the apology say? The document didn't attach any of that stuff. Those are all things that are going to be relevant to a jury of impartial, supposedly, citizens. The lawyer's job on both sides is to make sure it's a fair and impartial jury, and they're going to look at that and they're going to make a decision. And And if he's found to have been responsible civilly, then the question is, what's the league do? Because I personally think the league's not going to intervene in this, even though they have the power to do it, Miles. But just like with Antonio Brown's pending charge of sexual assault and rape in a civil setting, the league's, hey, we investigated. We don't know what to do. We're going to wait and see what happens. Because what the league, I think, doesn't want to do is say, it's fine, no punishment, and then there's some major verdict that screams out the guy did it. I think that what we can expect the league to do here, and they've officially said no comment, but I think common sense would suggest they probably won't do much of anything. They'll just monitor and they'll wait and see. And if there is a verdict at some point, then you take action if needed. And I know Deshaun Watson scoffed at the idea of a six-figure settlement, and I don't know whether that's $100,000 or $999,999. But for what it's going to cost him to hire a lawyer, and for the cloud it's going to put over him in the short term and long term, and the potential, depending upon how the dominoes fall, that he could be disciplined by the league at some point, it's money well spent. Once you accept, just like the Texans had to accept their situation, Deshaun Watson's got to work through anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and accept that the best way out of this situation for him is to figure out the right check to write to make this a business transaction and clear it away. And again, that even if he didn't do it, and this is one of the realities of having to manage these kinds of risks in a litigation setting, even if he didn't do it, there's value in not having to deal with this whole process and worry that things could go haywire at trial and you end up with an adverse verdict.
Yeah, and that's why, these records, they get sealed, right? There's all kinds of processes where when you sign something or when there is a settlement, these things become secret. So that's exactly why they happen. So basically you are able to say, all right, I am signing a check, and I want to just use the saying, make this go away, but because that feels crass to me, especially when we're dealing with something like sexual assault. But in effect, that's kind of what you're trying to do, because you're trying to say, I want this process to end. How do I end this process in the best way possible for me? And like you said, even if he did not do it, or if he did, that could be the most expedient solution for him to put this issue, this particular, this lawsuit behind him.
And I want to be clear on this, and I'm glad you made that point. This isn't a commentary on the seriousness of the allegations. Obviously, if he actually did it, it's a different analysis altogether. But even if he knows in his heart he didn't do it, and he knows that it's false and it's fabricated and it's a money grab, even if it's all those things, it's a business transaction, and you have to ask yourself, is it worth dealing with this over the next 18 months to 2 years? Is it worth having this potentially derail my effort to get out of Houston? Is it worth all the money I'm going to spend 1 hour at a time on the lawyer who'll be representing me in this case with no guarantee that I'm going to be able to convince a jury of the truth that I didn't do anything wrong? That's the mountain that you're staring at when you've been sued, if you truly are innocent. If you're guilty, he deserves everything he's going to get through this process, whether he settles it or not. If he's innocent, there's still a good argument to be made to finding a way as a business transaction to remove this from his overall plate of worries in his life.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.